All right.
Go.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third update with the mayor. It's May 13th, 2020, and we welcome Mayor Jen Ahearn-Koch, and she is speaking today, as she has been the last two times, with the leaders of the Downtown Sarasota Condo Association. Thank you, Mayor, for being here again, and can you update us on what's happening in the city?
Sure. Thank you all. I wanted to thank you all for, participating, being involved in our city and doing as much as you do. I was just on the phone with the city manager and I said, I gotta go. I got quite a savvy group to talk to. So you all are incredibly important in what you do and your participation. So I want you to all know that how much we value you. As you may or may not know, we did have a city commission meeting last night. We had a workshop scheduled that we could not go forward with because we had technical difficulties. So the workshop items have been put onto Monday's agenda. And so we will be discussing those. Did manage to get Granicus up and working. So we were able to go forward with our city commission meeting, our special city commission meeting. And we discussed, as you may or may not know, Bobby Jones, among other things. And of course, we had COVID discussion. And we were updated on that. And I know that you all wanted some updates about the restaurants and the downtown situation. So what we're trying to do and what the city manager is trying to do and the staff are trying to do is trying to gauge the businesses and see, do a survey and see what their reaction is. Some businesses want the outdoor space, some of them don't want it. I can give you an example that when some restaurants were trying to adapt immediately to COVID, the city quickly helped them with converting some parking spots into curbside to go. For example, the corner where you have C'est La Vie and you have Evie's Tavern, you have a variety of restaurants clustered there. The city was able to help create a sort of a safe curbside to go place where people could, drive up, pick up, and put it in their trunk or put it in their car and leave safely and everybody keep their distance. Some of the restaurants love that and prefer that. And so they don't want that ability to go away. Some restaurants, of course, want to have more space outside. Some businesses, are being more conservative about expanding out, and some of them want to. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to, talk to the different businesses, perhaps on a case-by-case basis, and figure out where it makes sense and where it doesn't make sense, so that, if you're expanding one business's ability to be out in the street, you're not actually impeding somebody else's business as well. So
Mayor, can I interrupt you for just a second? Are you on a different device than you used the last time?
No,
because
I'm on my
you're actually
city's
almost frozen, but we can hear you perfectly. So please continue.
Okay, yeah, I know it's you all are pretty much frozen as well, but I can hear you as well. So maybe it's just the internet, I don't know.
It may be your router. You may need a new router.
Oh, please don't tell me that. I don't want to have to do that.
You've been wearing it out, I think.
You can run a speed test by going onto the internet and checking it.
Okay, I will do that.
But we can hear you
here, my router.
We can hear you perfectly,
okay.
So please continue.
Okay, so I know some of the questions spoke to tables and 6-foot distances and to regulation of all of this. We are asking businesses to have 6 feet between the people and not between the tables. We are asking businesses to ask their employees to wear masks. When I spoke with Mr. Fournier about this, as far as requiring it, it's a situation where if every business had a mask, we're free distribution of it, we could require it. But because it's something that not necessarily everybody has the ability to procure, we cannot require it at this point. So we can only recommend it, we can request it. However, if there are businesses that are going to be using our right-of-way, I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself. Somebody must have their speaker on or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Better.
so if businesses are going to be asking to use the right of way, that is something we could tie it to. As far as our own permitting goes, and regulating this, there are 4 or 5 different ways of regulating this. It's the Florida Department of Health, the DBPR, Department of Business and Professional Regulation. There's the restaurant itself, the customers, and then the city. So we are actually looking for multiple abilities to regulate this. If you see somebody in violation, you can contact the Florida Department of Health. It's actually, their jurisdiction along with the DBPR. And if it's in the city right of way, then it's our regulation of it. So ultimately what we're hoping is that everybody will be safe and everybody will be smart and everybody will comply. It's not a situation where we want to be out ticketing people that are just trying to keep their business afloat, or people that are trying to just get out and get some fresh air and enjoy, a meal safely. So, it's a combination of everything. I'm happy to answer any questions. I did want to add that I believe there was an article today in the paper that spoke briefly about how Venice pulled their businesses and 68% of them did not want to do this. So they're not doing it. So it's sort of where we are.
Mayor, is there a way for the city to have a central reporting number, email, something like that, so that if people felt uncomfortable, for instance, a restaurant was being egregiously non-compliant with anything, that they could call the city? Does the city have any special number they can call, or
the city manager? Yeah, go ahead. The city manager is sending me the information for the Florida Department of Health and the DBPR and the city's number. So I will get that to you as soon as he sends it to me. I will forward that to you.
Thank you, and we'll put that out with this interview. Ken, you have a question?
Well, I have an observation and a question. Last Friday, I went downtown to pick up lunch. I ordered takeout lunch, and I drove up Main Street through the 13, 14, and 1500 blocks. There was not a single parking place on those 3 blocks. And there were lots of people on the street and very few masks. I was kind of surprised. It was like it had been before this whole thing started. So that's one observation. The other is about the population versus deaths in Manatee and Sarasota County. As of yesterday, there were 795 cases in Manatee County with 74 deaths. In Sarasota County, we had 435 cases with 57 deaths. But as of last year, the estimated population for Manatee was 403,000, and for Sarasota, 434,000. I wonder why we have such a favorable rate of infections and deaths versus Manatee, even though our population is larger. Had you noticed that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Our fatality rate has been hovering 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%. It is very, very high, and it is very, very concerning. Absolutely, that is something that I've been noticing and looking at. And our percent positive per tested, it started under 10, it spiked above 10, it went as high as 12, 13%, and then it's gone down, and it's sort of going between. Now these are only the state the county tests, not the state tests, right? It's been going between 6, 7, 8, almost 9%, but staying under the 10% range. There are some studies that say to open safely, you need to be under 3%. Manatee County's has been up at 15%. Some days it shoots very high. And so between the percent positive in Manatee County, the fatality rate here in City of in Sarasota County, those are numbers that are very, very concerning. along with the percent positives as well. I suspect, though, that once we get the state's testing results, that they will be much, much, much lower. It's what we're hoping for, and it's what makes logical sense. So we will, we have to still wait until we get those numbers because we don't have them yet. We have 1 or 2 days worth, and that's it.
I saw the numbers actually as kind of encouraging because we're doing something right, and Manatee County is not, because their infection rate is significantly higher and their death rate is significantly higher than ours, even though their population is lower than ours. That's what was striking to me, and I wonder what you're doing better.
I think that I think that we issued that declaration on the March 13th. We were the first one, I believe, in the state to do that. And I think that just sent a message very quickly that, we're taking this seriously. We're taking the virus seriously, that people do need to shelter in place. And then, every effort along with that of, we couldn't require those events to shut down, but they did self-shut down. And there were an awful lot of them that weekend. I think that was a big move, and I think that was a very important move. That's why this sort of opening needs to be phased in. It needs to be careful. It needs to be cautious, and that's why I continue to err on the side of caution as we talk about and move towards opening. And we're required to do, what the governor has required us to do. But I think each step we need to be as cautious as we can, so that if we have to step back, then we can do it, and it's a small action rather than a very large sweeping action.
Does anyone else have a question? Patrick?
Yes. Mayor, just to feedback, I don't know if anybody else has been down, but at the SPD, they're on downtown there, they're giving out the bags from 9 to 11, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You get a plastic bag, 1 per customer, 5 surgical masks inside. So they're freely available, and these are the ones with a little wire top, etc. And so that's available for, I would assume a restaurant could go get a pack and have them for their customers. Secondly, I've noticed by myself a number of the restaurants that are A, not having their staff wearing masks, and B, they're not practicing social distancing when they're waiting on outside tables. I was observing, waitresses within 2 or 3 feet of the customers, just like in normal times. And so we have no choice but to simply don't, if you care about it, you don't go to those restaurants. And I don't know how we, spread the word. People will see, hey, we're not going to participate, go to restaurants if the staff is not social distancing or wearing masks when they're in front of the customers. And I don't know how to get that word out. I mean, there obviously are residents and public who will go. But if they're expecting the downtown residents, many of whom are seniors, many of whom see our population as in higher risk, are going to be much more risk adverse. And the restaurants can open, but they're not going to get the customers, at least not the older ones. At least that's what it appears from walking around several times downtown, including this morning. So.
Perhaps it would be a good idea to have some site where people could weigh in about their experiences at various restaurants, so that other people could check that site and then say, XYZ restaurant is not using masks. It just, public opinion would make their business better or worse. Roger, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to, I think, follow this. I was out this morning looking for a cup of coffee to go. And I decided that I would only buy my coffee from a place in which the servers were wearing masks. And it was the 4th place I found, and that was Whole Foods. And the other 3, no mask and no social distancing in the coffee shop. And it just really irritated me, because obviously I was going to take a risk getting a cup of coffee.
Now that's interesting, because that could be posted somewhere.
Yeah.
We might
Well, there is a Facebook site, and it's I believe it's curbside SRQ or SRQ curbside. When everything started and they were restaurants were deciding whether or not they wanted to do curbside to go, this developed. I believe it's administered by Sarah Lansky, So you could check that out. You can get in touch with her. I can get you her information. This would be important information that may want to be included where, you know, we can start bragging about the places that are doing proper social distancing. And there are some websites, for example, I know the Herald Tribune has a website that they constantly maintain, Wade to Tangelo. You can contact him. He's always writing about restaurants that are, you know, doing curbside to go and delivery at that time. And now, of course, it's the ones that are reopening. So perhaps, you know, we could be writing to the people that are communicating this information and stress the importance of restaurant compliance with masks, hand sanitizers, social distancing, and all of the other practices that we're hoping to keep everybody safe.
Anybody else questions right now? Bob Perolo?
Yeah, hi. I just have a question on following up on the deaths in Sarasota County. Ken just said 57. Do we know what the breakdown of those deaths are? Nursing home versus people under 60, over 70?
So we do know nursing home. That information is available. It's on the I don't know if you go on the COVID site, you know, the COVID-19 site that's run by the state. On the main page, if you scroll down, it will give you the main COVID metrics. Then it will do it by county. It gives you a county report. It gives you all the counties, so it's like a 68-page document. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom for Sarasota County. And then there's also, in that report, on that page, there's also a report per nursing homes. So it does list the nursing homes, so you have to know where they are, if they're in the city or the county, and so on and so forth. And then it lists, you know, the number of cases and deaths. So you have to sort of day by day go and count it, but you can sort of parse it out. I did speak with Dr. Gardillo, and I mentioned that last night in the City Commission meeting. He is the head epidemiologist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and I spoke with him last week because he sees the cases that come in, and they are able to know if they come in from the, you know, the sort of the assisted living facilities or the community, as he breaks them down. And last week when I spoke to him, he gave me a little, when I spoke to him, first of all, 3 weeks ago, and he said that it's not time to open yet. We need to continue to keep everything shelter in place, send the message. Then I spoke with him on last Thursday, and he said that he's starting to see, he's hoping that he can advise me that there is a trend that it's going down. And when I say hope and trend, it was very specifically that, again, nothing is good about having cases or anyone testing positive or any of this. But what he was saying was that the cases in the assisted living facilities where people are not out and about in the community versus the ones that are in the community, he was seeing a trend of that, you know, the community cases going down. I spoke with him yesterday, and he said, unfortunately, that is not something he can report on because he's not seeing it. The actual inverse happened over the weekend and this week. So where he was seeing, and I think the numbers were 2 cases from the community and 6 cases a day from the facilities, it actually inversed to 6 from the community and 2 from, you know, the assisted living facility. So he said he could not advise me that there was a downward trend and that it is, you know, advisable to open up the beaches. So it's one person's opinion. He is a medical doctor. He is the head epidemiologist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and I take his recommendation seriously. And I did speak with Chuck Henry as well, and I spoke with Dr. Denon, who is at the Florida Department of Health, and nobody could offer me any clear trends or recommendations. And they said that they would be able to hopefully give us a recommendation on the 18th, one way or the other. Nobody has an agenda. Nobody's looking to prove something one way or the other. We're just looking for factual information to see if we meet the criteria.
Mayor, I have a question. Tell me if I'm right about this. I think the governor's order included a requirement for the restaurants, et cetera, to have employee screening. I'm wondering who monitors that, whether or not they're doing that. I think screening meaning, do they have a temperature, et cetera? Are you ill? does anyone monitor that? I don't know if that falls on the city. There's only so much you can do, but it's wonderful to have rules, but who checks it?
It's the Florida Department of Health. They are the ones
And
who are supposed to be monitoring this.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I hope they have monitored.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is one of those things where you have these requirements, and the requirements are because we're looking after the health and the safety of our community, and you're hoping that, you know, most will comply. I mean, you would need a force of thousands to go to every restaurant and watch them as they take the, you know, servers' temperatures every day, and, you know, do they have the sanitizer? Do they have the masks? Did they touch their face when they had the mask? And did they wash their hands and take the mask off and throw it away and put a new one on? And you know, you would just need thousands of people to regulate and monitor this, and we don't have that. I mean, we don't have it as a city. We're having reports of people speeding, as you all may or may not know, which if you live downtown, almost 100 miles an hour going over the bridge. People are loving this, that there's no traffic or less traffic. And that I find really, really dangerous. And I don't want to take police officers off of our streets that are monitoring these people that are speeding, which is also life-threatening and dangerous to many, many other people, to go and regulate, you know, are the people at the table 6 feet apart? You know, that's where we say to the community, please help us, please comply, please be safe. Don't go out if you don't feel safe. Just don't go out. Order your food, stay at home, you wear your mask, try to make sure other people do, recommend it, continue to talk about it. And yes, support restaurants that you think are not complying. And that's what, you know, the Florida Department of Health can hopefully have people to deal with this, along with the business professional regulation groups. So no, the city does not have the ability to do this, and nor would I recommend our police stand around and go inside restaurant after restaurant after restaurant. I mean, we have speeding on Central Avenue, we have speeding on Coconut Avenue, we have speeding on US 41, on Gulfstream, over the Ringling Bridge, and it's serious. There are serious, issues with that. So,
Patrick.
Okay, Mayor, I have a series of questions. So on that last thing about following up with the restaurants and so forth, I do notice that we do have walking around officers. In fact, I saw one yesterday afternoon, the red-haired gentleman out there. And, you know, he's going by, observing every restaurant and so forth. Why would, just on their beat, not making notice or commenting or saying something? And is that being written up? Is that officer on the beat who is walking by every one of those restaurants out there, making a note of it, or something, reporting back, you know, how is that going?
Absolutely, yeah, that is absolutely happening. Yes,
I agree. You don't need you need an officer out there on the Ringling Bridge at 11 p.m. at night, and he'll write half a dozen tickets. I'm sure. I hear it. I'm sure Roger does.
I hear it.
Yeah. Secondly, what is the plan, the Florida plan and the Sarasota County plan for testing all assisted living facilities staff and residents that we've been assured is going to happen this month? Is that occurring in this county?
Well, what we're trying to do, like every state, like every city, like every county, is trying to get our hands on as many tests as we can, and the rapid tests. So right now, the state's test that they just did at UTC, they started on Sunday. We got our first results on Sunday night. So it took way longer than we were expecting. We were thinking 24, 36 hours. Then we were told 5 days, and then it really actually took 8 days. And that's because there's a bottleneck in the laboratories. So you can get the tests, and then you have to have the equipment to run the tests, and then you have to send it to the laboratories and get the results. I spoke with Chuck Henry yesterday, and the Florida Department of Health was able to have the possibility to buy a test, the actual test, but they could not get the cartridges. The cartridges wouldn't ship for 2 months. So there's no sense in getting a test if you can't have the cartridges. So they're looking into other ways of trying to figure this out. But again, this is every city, every county, every state, every department, every governor. We're all after the same thing, which is the testing capacity. And the Abbott tests, the Roche tests, the rapid tests, we're all trying to get our hands on them. So, you know, the county is running those pop-up tests. So we have one in North, Central, and South County. They are looking into mobile testing, getting a mobile sort of, you know, van. They are looking into getting and going up to the individual homes along with the assisted living facilities. And we are also still in active conversation with getting our own permanent testing site, because we feel very strongly that this is not something that's going to go away in the next couple of months. It's something that we're going to have to stay on top of for probably years with an S on it, and have a facility where people can go and get tested once we have the capacity. So we are looking at places where we can do something like that on a permanent basis. We're working with the Department of Health on that, and we're looking with other organizations. So we're still, you know, trying to figure out a way where we can get more testing, as is everybody.
So
I
what
hope
I
I
understand
answered your
then is
question.
that in that the Sarasota County, we don't know when all assisted living facilities will be tested, staff and residents. They don't have a time frame. We don't know when they'll complete that. Is that what you were hearing?
Yes.
So
Yes.
my aunt and mother-in-law are locked away for months, right? I mean, that's what we're saying. What is the Sarasota County contact tracing plan? So they do tests, they find people positive.
Yes.
Then what? What is the plan? What is the stated written plan, and who is staffed to do the contact tracing?
Yes, the Florida Department of Health. So I spoke with Chuck Henry about that, and they are doing contact tracing. That is one thing on that gating criteria and entering into phase 1 that we are doing, that I'm happy to report. They are tracking anywhere from 200 to 250 people a day, every day. They have a staff that's making between 200 and 400 phone calls every day. And they have the capacity to grow that by double. Once they reach that, that's their capacity, and they would need more staff. But at this point in time, they are doing contact tracing. They have been doing it, and we are studying it. Dr. Lisa Merritt has issued a report on it. It's very preliminary, and I will forward that to Eileen to distribute to you all as well. And I would urge you to get in touch with her if you wanted to get more information. But that is some good news. Yes, we are doing, the county, the Florida Department of Health is doing contact tracing, and they are, they're really up on it. So that is some good news.
Good news is always welcome.
Is there a plan? I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up. Is there a plan for testing of city staff and commissioners, et cetera? What's?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Other questions on these topics? So, Mayor, just to go back a little bit, as far as placing tables for restaurant tables in the right-of-way, that just has not been decided. Is that correct?
Well, we're doing it on a case-by-case basis. So if it's private property, right, that's one thing. If it's public right-of-way, that's another thing. And so what we're trying to do is we are trying to help, you know, the restaurants. I mean, for example, there is a restaurant downtown that has no outdoor dining, and their indoor dining, if they were to comply, would allow one person in the restaurant. So in that case, we have said, okay, so let's help you get 2 or 3 or 4 tables properly placed outside. This is all temporary, but this is so you can keep your business afloat. But you must comply with the rules and the masks and so on and so forth. And in those cases, when we permit that, and we can say, you must comply, right? But if it's their own property, we wish them to comply, but we can't. So we are trying to help on a case-by-case basis where we can do it. But blocking off all, streets and parking, and parking spaces, like, a whole street from Main, it was suggested last night, Main all the way down to Palm. That is something that impacts a number of businesses. And so on the one hand, you have, more tables. On the other hand, you have no parking and no curbside to go potential. And on the one hand, you are helping businesses, have, the ability to stay afloat. On the other hand, are you creating a Mardi Gras atmosphere? So these are the things that we have to grapple with and talk about and figure out. And I think we can get there, and I think we can do it. I think that on a case-by-case basis, we can figure this out. But the staff is actively developing guidelines and monitoring this, just about the best we can.
Well, question, how many emails do you get a day, number one? And what is public sentiment looking like right now?
I'm going to guess I get about 200 to 300 emails a day, somewhere in that range.
And you answer them?
I try to. I can't answer them all, and then there are some that I don't answer. Some that I just don't because they're inappropriate. And I can tell you, I've gotten some emails, and this is starting to be a conversation that I hear, and it's come to me in more than one email that when we look at the number of people who died, and we look at the ages of the people who died, we should put that in the backdrop of businesses and people's livelihoods, and I find that completely inappropriate.
Wow.
And I find it very offensive. The insinuation is that somebody who is 80 years old is not of much value as somebody else who's younger in their livelihood. And so those are emails that I do not answer because I can't. I find it completely inappropriate. So, but I do try to answer as many as I can. And if I don't answer, I apologize. Hopefully I will get to you someday. And often what I'll do is I'll just reply, can I call you? Because I go for a walk every day. I try to get out, and walk and get some exercise. So sometimes I'll make a handful of those phone calls while I'm walking. People are generally, vast majority, very, very nice, very nervous and afraid. They're afraid for their health. They're afraid for their business. They're afraid for their family. And they're cautious and they're compliant. And people are just really very, very nice, but also nervous and frustrated. And I get it. I get all of those sentiments and I get all of those feelings. And I just, I continue to try to highlight the good that's coming out in our community. Thank you, Mel, for helping us with the Sarasota Star. And we had a nice story about Carolyn Michael. And we get to brag about, the beautiful acts that people do in these kinds of times. And I think that people focus on that much more than we know, and are much more appreciative of that than we know. And so the voices out there are, right now the temperament is about, I would say 65% in support of slow, cautious, step-by-step, and then there's about 35% that are very frustrated and do want everything to open up at a faster pace. And I understand the sentiment. I understand businesses are struggling, and I don't make light of that in any way, shape, or form. People's livelihood is essential. Our economy is essential. It's a big issue to deal with. So, we are trying to be cautious. I am trying to be cautious and take this step by step. Again, I think that the most wise thing we can do for our economy and for our health is to take this step by step and to take a cautious approach. All of the models I look at, all of the research I read says that if you open up too quickly and you have to shut back down again, not only does that decrease your capacity for a strong and fast economic recovery, but you also put lives at risk, and it also diminishes the public's confidence in you to govern and to make a plan, and a good plan, and to stick with that good plan. So we don't want to risk any of those, and that's why I'm trying to take a well-informed, data-driven, cautious approach. And but I understand the sentiment on the other side of that.
Mayor Fanning, you have a question?
Yes, I do. As I listen to the discussion, it strikes me that policy making relative to these issues is not going to go away anytime soon. You can have a policy today, and then some data comes in, and the policy needs to be tweaked. It seems to me that we're getting a lot of anecdotal data. you as the mayor are getting probably the best data because a lot of people want to talk to you and send you emails appropriately or inappropriately, and you can categorize them in any way you want. The city manager, I'm sure, gets a lot of input. I'm sure staff does. Is there a policy making group that gets together in some manner that analyzes this data, the anecdotal data, the real data, and other than you and the city commissioner sitting down, or you and the city commissioner sitting down and trying to all publicly make all this known and come up with a policy? Do you have a group, or are you thinking of putting a group? I'm not going to call it like the president's coronavirus group, but something similar to that for the city that directs policy and strategies going forward.
Well, as you know, the city commissioners, we're not allowed to discuss anything unless it's a publicly noticed meeting where the public has access and minutes are taken. So unless it's that situation, no, we don't. We don't have that kind of a capacity to discuss things. I think that is part of some frustration, is that there is no central location for any of that. But that can be said for a lot of the issues that we deal with, right? Many issues are, we are so lucky to have a community that is engaged and is well informed. And I think that is a plus. I don't ever take it as a negative or a bother or any of that. I value the input, but I have an informal group of people that I, discuss with, and I take in all of this information from groups like you and other neighborhood associations. But, there's no way for us as a city commission to meet together with a group unless it's a publicly noticed meeting.
One of the
maybe you need an advisory group made up of a group of city leaders that aren't prevented from getting together to give you advice, and then you can discuss that advice at a workshop or a city commission meeting.
So an advisory board,
there's a police advisory group.
Yeah, like an advisory board like we have for planning and everything else. That's not a bad idea, actually.
The problem is, Peter, that any advisory group set up by the city comes under the Sunshine Law. And so you have the exact same problem.
They have a role here in setting up an advisory group that's greater than just the DSCA, possibly.
If it's not set
that's
up
another
by the city,
discussion.
chances are it would work. I would check with the city's attorney, but if the city has a hand in setting it up, I know you come under the Sunshine Law. It's one of the many downsides of the Sunshine Law, I say.
Well, and also our advisory boards are not meeting at the moment because while the governor has waived the quorum rule that you have to have physical presence, it's only for the city commission. The attorney is going to speak to that on Monday because we keep asking about the planning board because there's a bottleneck of things that are happening. And so I think our first step is going to be the DRC because they are not by the Sunshine. They don't have to go by Sunshine. It's a city group. So I think we're going to reconvene the DRC, but we can't unless our advisory boards want to meet in person, which we're not advising at this point. So unfortunately, that rule does not apply to our advisory boards.
It's quite a dilemma. Actually, I think you ought to set up a quarantine hotel and just put the planning board in there for a month, because by the time the work, as an alumna, I can tell you they're not too happy about the amount of the workload that's coming their way. Can you tell us anything about the farmers market? Is there anything further happening on that? Or I see a lot of people on Facebook and other places, asking questions about it. Is there anything new on that at all?
I just sent an email to the city manager this weekend, asking for an update on the situation. And I don't know any more than probably you all know more than I know. I know that what I was told was that Mr. Pagano did resign. His resignation was accepted, and then I believe the last I heard was he retracted it. And I don't know where they are with that discussion, and I don't know where the farmers market is with their activities either at this moment. Sorry, I have no update for you on that.
No, it's not run by the city. I realize that. I just was wondering if you had been approached by anyone to do anything further.
The only thing I was approached to do was to recognize Phil's work with the farmers market, that if we could do some sort of recognition.
Okay.
Good.
Other questions? This is your big chance. Roger?
Well, I'd like to reinforce the speeding and noise issue. And since I live on Gulf Stream, I'm getting emails from both of you, the Watergate, Sunset Towers, and I'm trying to think of the other one within the city about the noise and the speeding.
Bay Plaza.
Yeah, that's an issue. And of course, one of the problems is that the bridge is designed for 70 mile an hour. And so it's tempting to race there. And we do get, maybe it's because we're home, but we're hearing the noise and we're hearing the speeding. It seems more frequently. Just a comment there.
Right, and let's not forget that a student died. Two students died.
Yes.
3 students died.
Fast.
Not long ago, a year and a half ago, speeding over that bridge. So it's a big concern. It's a real issue, and it's a real concern.
Peter, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to reemphasize Roger's point now that I'm a resident on Fruitville Road, and we have created a speedway between Coconut and Orange. Those lights are set in sync, and you can start at Coconut with your pickup truck and dual exhaust and go roaring down there easily at 70, 75 miles an hour. I see people pushing the crosswalk button, and I worry very, very much that the light's going to change, and there's no way that these speeding vehicles can stop in time should the pedestrian not exercise a great deal of caution too. So I would ditto Roger's point that we really do need to start to monitor and enforce some of our speed regulations on these main thoroughfares.
Thank you. I will let the police chief know that that's also a point. I think I must have sent 10 emails to her over the weekend with reports of speeding throughout the city. And so I will add that to her list.
Thank
So
you.
we can slow it down by getting more cars on the road, and we seem to be good at that. This is the first time anyone's been able to speed. I'd be curious to know what the accident rate is with a lot less people on the road. Any more questions for the mayor? David Lowe.
Mayor, on the 18th, a couple agenda items, the Parks and Rec and the Sarasota in Motion got moved to the 18th for understandable reasons. I was in touch with the Marlin's office this morning to inquire that the meeting on the 18th will start at 1:30. And I asked the question of his assistant, Kathy, if was there an evening session planned? Because my concern is all of these agenda items that you folks are discussing to try and back 1:30 to heaven knows without a planned break. It would just seem to me as input that depending on the length of the agenda, it'd be planned that there be 2 sessions. And I say that so people who wish to speak can, won't be in Never Never Land. At least they know likely what segment of the agenda they might be on. So I'm just concerned about the number of issues you're trying to deal with, some of them on the Sarasota in Motion being a 10-year plan and pretty consequential, and trying to rush conversations about some of these. It just seems to me to be a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. We have, the last 2 meetings, discussions went on longer than any meeting we have had in a very, very long time. And a lot of the discussion is COVID related, and that's our sort of umbrella. We have that for all of the meetings, and because issues are constantly cropping up, it's hard to gauge how long that conversation is going to go. And again, to Mr. Fanning's point, what new information, what new data we have, and how, and sharing that with one another. So it's impossible to gauge how those conversations are going to go, how late they're going to go. But you do raise a good point, because we did say that we would add it, but I think we should probably anticipate 2 sessions. I will call Marlon this morning. Is it still morning? Oh, I'll call him today and see if we can't go back to our meeting schedule where we would have a 1:30 to 4:30 and a 6 to 9 session.
Yeah. Just heads up, I heard from him indirectly a couple hours ago, and his thought was just to continue on as long as it took. It was the inference. So I'm not looking to annoy anybody. I'm just kind of thinking about, some of these are pretty complicated, and it just seems to be kind of more learned approach.
Sorry about that. So this is the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the tabs there? Those are all the different items.
Right.
Most of them are consents, though. Yeah, most of them are consent. That doesn't mean that we don't read them and we don't pull them and discuss them. But and then this is just the leftover from the workshop here. Although this is going to be an hour-and-a-half discussion, I can guarantee you that. So I think that most of this is consent. Here's the agenda. With, of course, COVID discussion. We have 2 new business items, 1 unfinished item, and a presentation.
Yeah, so I'm just giving input here and just a sense that I have, but you folks, what you think best.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll have a discussion with Marlon and get back to you.
I would agree with David. If they're brave enough to go down and give input, you really don't need them sitting around there for 6-7 hours. That kind of defeats the purpose of putting them in a separate room.
Right.
So that's really a good suggestion. Well, I know the mayor's really busy. Are there any other questions that we can ask her for, with suggestions, anything else? Well, if nothing, then Mayor, we look forward to seeing you in about another, every other week or so,
Sure.
Unless something major happens in the meantime. We know the big major change this week is that they're opening the hair salons. So, and in fact, we have the governor's questions and answers about how that should be done, and we're going to put that on our website as well, so people know if they finally go and get themselves cleaned up, they'll know whether or not the salon is following the rules. So thank you so much for coming in, and thank you everyone for participating, and we'll see you next time. Stay well.
Can I add one more thing?
Please do.
One more thing. The roundabouts did open. 14th and 10th Street did open. And things are going more or less smoothly. People are going too fast entering the roundabout. And then people are still having a difficult time understanding that they need to yield to the traffic that is in the roundabout. So to continue to spread the word and be safe.
There has to be it has to be easier once the 10,000 barrels are taken away. Mm-hmm. That's a bit distracting in that roundabout. And I know Roger will be happy to see that. I think I've seen Roger there spinning around just for the fun of it. He's waited a long time for this. And his little friend too. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Bye.